Holy moly. I'm a little winded today. I had to run downstairs and get my charger for my phone. It's another lovely Wednesday in the Valley. Is anybody else as tired of this rain as I am? I don't know, but I'm ready to rock and roll. So, we're off and running. James, I'm glad that they got Johnny Jefferson. I'm glad they got Justin Jefferson signed, my man.
Makes me feel a little bit better heading into the summer. Just a little bit better.
You know, you think about it. We got two number one wide receivers, you know. They both won the Biletnikoff Award. We're going to have a strong offense. I think that Brian Flores is going to roll that defense into something else. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we just need those vets that they're bringing in and some of those younger guys to make some impact plays, and hopefully things will work out. Tough division, though, with Green Bay and Detroit, and I think Chicago's a crapshoot as usual, but we'll get into that in the next few weeks once training camp things of those start up.
Sorry, but I'm still not convinced that Detroit is what we think they are, to quote Dennis Green.
Even with a little bit of a regression, 9-10 wins, that still makes it tough and thick division, to say the least, to try and fight through.
Right. Well, at least we're going to have some offensive firepower. So, all right. So this week's show, I have Rick Becker on. So I said it last week. As far as property taxes go, taxes in general, I think that it is ridiculous how much we're taxed as citizens in the United States. I mean, if you look at it, close to 40% of your income goes to taxes, and we hear people struggling. We hear people talk about inflation and how it's hitting really hard. And personally, I don't think the worst is here yet, because as you know, the government does everything they can when it's an election cycle to make sure that, look at the price of gas is down. Food is starting to come down. They make it seem like things are getting better. They manipulate the economy. They manipulate the way things are to give people a false sense of security. And if you don't believe me, just go look at what happens after each election cycle. It is amazing how quickly prices go up, gas goes up. All the things that we need to live all of a sudden become more expensive. There's less money available to us to spend. And so I rail on Tony Garrick because he's so hawkish on the property tax issue. And I had a great conversation with him a week ago, and he was telling me the fact that even if it goes up by $50 a year, that affects him. And, he has a budget that he has to live in. And so I thought to myself, I need to take a bigger look or a better look at this whole tax thing. And so I started looking at the end property tax that Rick Becker has put together, and it's gaining a lot of steam and it's gaining a lot of traction. So I'm going to have Rick Becker on in a few minutes, and we're going to talk about it because I don't know the whole thing, okay? I've got a bunch of questions to ask, and I think these are questions that we all have. The biggest one is, okay, if we don't have property taxes in the state, where do we get that money from? And I think that's the central point that people need to understand, is that there are resources out there. And I believe Rick says one of them is government waste or overspending. I said it last week. The city of Fargo created programs with COVID money with no way to pay for them after COVID money ran out. How do we do that? That's just poor planning. So in this way, it's like, hey, let's really understand this process, because personally, I think it needs to be on the ballot after looking at it, after studying it for this week. But since I'm not an expert, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rick Becker. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to have you on, because I'm one of those guys that when I first heard the end property tax thing, I was like, okay, we need money to get things done, and the biggest thing is, okay, if we don't get taxed on property tax, they're going to hit us someplace else. So if you first, congratulations, you're running for Congress here. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll get into the tax thing.
Okay, sure. Yes, I'm running for Congress, one of 5 people on the Republican ticket. Then there are 2 more Democrats running as well. So a lot of good options for folks, but the election is a week from yesterday, and it's coming down to the wire. The two front runners are myself and Julie Fedorchak, and I think at least to me, it's pretty obvious that one candidate, myself, is sort of the bull in the china shop, the fighter, someone who's going to stand up to the crap in Washington, D.C. That's why I'm running, because I think that's what we need if we're going to fix things. If there's any hope of fixing things on a federal level, that's what we need, is to send people who are going to fight and stand for principle. And then Julie is the other primary contender, and I think she represents more of kind of the establishment, status quo Republican. And so the voters have a good choice there of if they think a bull in a china shop and a fighter is what we don't need, then, that's pretty clear. On the other hand, if they're with me and they recognize America's right on the edge of falling off a cliff, and the only way to save it is to send someone who's going to fight, then their vote ought to be for me.
Well, I have to tell you, in my political leanings, here's how I view it. I like the fact that you never went into attack mode from what I saw. I like my candidates that are running for political office to stand on their platform. Don't talk to me about the other guy. Talk to me about what you're going to bring to the table. And this property tax deal is one thing. I'm like, okay, this guy is fighting for people that he doesn't know, in that you're looking to put money in people's pockets.
Yeah. Well, and so, yeah, that's a good segue. I will say, not that matters, I suppose, but the property tax is not something that's directly associated with my campaign. I'm not doing it to bring awareness to the campaign.
Right.
This is a project I've literally been working on for 6 years. I had a measure prepared, a petition ready to go, and people ready to start getting signatures for it in 2020. Unfortunately, in March and April 2020, when COVID hit and made it virtually impossible to get the signatures. So fast forward, now it's up, and it's a great opportunity for the people it's an amazing opportunity for the people of North Dakota. And so I appreciate that you were sort of like, this sounds too far-fetched, too crazy, but you were willing to take a look at it, because I think when people take a look at it, we actually can do this, and it will benefit people. But it'll benefit every single person living in North Dakota, even if they're just renting right now. It will benefit them.
Well,
So,
I think that the big thing is that people have to understand the process, the how do we get there. And like I said, when I first heard about it, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then as I start digging into it, I was like, okay. So that's why we're here today, to talk about how do we get out of property tax, first of all, and how do we secure the money to still run our cities and our states and our state.
Yep. So the measure, there are two components to the measure, and one is property tax relief. The other is reform. And these are the things we've been asking for many years, since 2012 at least, when they promised us, hey, don't pass the measure in 2012 because we're going to give you relief and reform. And unfortunately, 12 years have transpired and we've not seen it. So this measure really is the people of North Dakota taking it into their own hands to give what the legislature had promised. But the relief is that everything we're paying now in property tax, the state is going to cover. So we've done this before in property tax buy downs. Now they haven't worked because you have to associate a buy down with a reforming of the system. The system is horribly flawed. And so we are reforming the system. But the relief is, hey, everything you're paying now in property tax, it doesn't include specials, by the way. I wish it could, but it doesn't. But everything you're paying in property tax now, the state is going to cover that amount. It's effectively like a buy down, but it will work because we're reforming the system. Now, how it works is that the cities and counties will not have any additional input from the state. The state doesn't have more control. They have no say because it's a flat amount. The amount that the cities and counties and school districts levy in 2024, what they raise in 2025, the state will be obligated to pay that flat amount, no questions asked. It's in the statistical report on property tax that the tax commissioner has. So the legislature, there's no subjectivity, there's no favoritism, there's no going to Bismarck to beg for money. It will be in the tax commissioner's booklet. It's a flat number. That's what's replaced. So that is $1 billion per year, which means then that you and all of your listeners and me, all of us, we keep what we're paying as of 2025. We keep that amount every single year going forward. That's huge relief. Now, the reform.
Hang on one second.
Okay, what about?
Hang on 1 second, Rick. We're already at our first break. I don't mean to cut you off, but I figure before we get into the other part of it, it sounds like we got to pay the bills. So when we come back, we're going to continue with Rick Becker and the property tax. Should we have it? Should we not have it? If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. Whoa. What? James, I don't remember any country music on my playlist like that. You're killing me, dog.
That's because I did a little tweaking.
Oh, well. All right, I guess we'll have to work on that. So I'm back. I've got Rick Becker on. He's running for Congress. But clearly, he stated it before that what we're talking about today isn't part of his platform. This is separate. He's been working on it for 6 years. So we were talking about the way we get to ending property tax. So we were talking about relief and reform, Rick, and I have a couple questions. The first is, if we're replacing the $1 billion, where does that money come from?
Right. So we've got a flat amount that the citizens are going to keep. It's $1 billion in our pockets.
Right.
We're going to spend in North Dakota's economy every year. Where it comes from. Right now, the state is spending so much more money than it needs. And I have it laid out. If people go to endpropertytax.com, I've got it, I think, pretty well laid out there. A number of areas that of waste and the inefficiency, redundancy that we can do away with, and you'll start seeing the number come down. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever I come up with, if I were to tell you, here's exactly how I would do it, well, I don't know if that's how the legislature is going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We must just accept, I think, that the state is overspending tremendously. We are overspending by many accounts in many different calculations, about $2 billion a year more than we should be. So we're talking about using half of that. Part of where it can come from are the hundreds of millions of dollars that the state government is giving to private businesses for these various, I call them crony schemes, but, whether it's subsidies or this or that, $70 million for a Theodore Roosevelt Library, $125 million given to a private company to develop fertilizer, $26 million for a company with drones, on and on and on.
So they give this
all
money.
I can tell you is
So is this incentive? Is it tax breaks, or is it? I'm trying to understand how they get the money, how the businesses get the money.
Well, there's programs. It's not just subsidy. I mean, sure, it's not just tax breaks. There are those too, and those would, if we do away with some of those, that would help. Okay. No, I'm just talking about giveaway. There's a little company in Bismarck, a film company. They got $600,000 to make a film about Governor Burgum's grandma. I mean, I'm telling you, there is so much money that the legislators look at it and they have all of these great ideas of how to spend all of this money. The sad thing is they don't consider that it's actually best spent by the people who earned it if we let them keep it. Okay. So the money's there. I can tell you as a state legislator for 10 years, it is there. And it's available. We need to use it. If we don't, they're going to keep on wasting it. We talk about North Dakota legendary. The only thing legendary so far has been the growth of our state government. We need to pass this measure, and we will be legendary for taking matters into our own hands and actually providing the relief and reform we deserve.
Fantastic. All right. So we have government waste, right? Or subsidizing these different. And it sounds to me like somebody comes and says, "Hey, I have an idea to build a library." The legislature funds it, even though it may not be needed. Why don't these things come to a vote?
Oh, to a vote of the people?
Yes.
They come to a vote of the legislature.
Okay. I'm disconnected here, so I'm trying to understand that. So they just fund these things without any notification to the general public, just like the $70 million library.
Correct.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, $26 million to a drone company. I'm looking at my list here. $10 million for a company to lease space to aerospace businesses. $250,000 to a creamery. $20 million to residential developers. $140 million to the energy industry, private businesses.
So I have a question:
It just goes on and on.
Is this list on the website?
Yes.
Because to me, so it's in property tax now, because this is the stuff that for me, first of all, my jaw is wide open, because it's like, hey, so we have this extra money, and these guys, somebody comes in and says, hey, let's do this. Is part of it that these people that are in legislature, it shows that they're doing something for their area, so they can go back to their constituents and say, oh, well, I got $30 million for this drone company.
Yes, exactly. That's it. And I think it's just a general, it's just a matter of philosophy, because what we see, and this is all across the United States, is we have state legislators that go and they want to help the state. And they're told, and they're under the impression like, gosh, if we just put some money toward this project or that project, that is going to have a return on investment. This is what they always use. The return on investment. You know what's phenomenal to me, John, is that the return on investment, this alleged return on investment of spending taxpayer dollars and giving it to private businesses, is like hundreds of times better than you could ever get in a real investment, which should tell you that it's not actually a true return on investment.
Right.
But I want to clarify, it's endpropertytax.com, endpropertytax.com. And if you go you go there, click on the About page, it'll take you to an infographic that will give you all the details. I went through the 550-page budget myself and found all of these government giveaways.
Perfect. And
but I also want to talk about the reform before I run out of time.
Yeah. Oh no, you have the entire hour, my friend.
Okay.
I want people to understand where you're saying this money is coming from, because that was one of my questions. Is, I didn't know that all this spending was going on, first of all, and so it's like for you to have it on the website now, people can go and say, oh yeah, this is the way they're spending my money. So now it makes sense. See, because a lot of people will think when you say we need to stop, we'll say the free money giveaway, they're thinking that you're going to cut social programs that benefit daycare or people that are in need or stuff like that. That's the first thing that people think, is that you're going to take away some programs that are actually needed in the community. So I'm glad that you laid it out there, that we're talking about, I call it corporate subsidies. When I talk about it, is that there's a lot of corporate finance, and it's under the guise of keeping the business climate strong in North Dakota. And so when I was going to school, if you had a good business model, that's what made your business model strong, not getting money from the government. So go ahead and let's talk about reform.
Yes. And yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have on everything we've talked about so far. But so we have the relief where we know that state government's going to replace what we're paying, no strings attached. That's the key, because the local officials will continue to make budgets without the state input. The same way they're making budgets now, they determine what the needs are for their community, they craft a budget, and then they figure out how they're going to pay for it. So the reform then is that going forward, there is no more no more taxing on the assessed value of property. So said in another way, there's no more valuation-based property tax, and it does away with that. But that leaves the local officials to then meet their needs, their budgetary needs, by any other number of means. So the locals retain control. Number one, they're getting a flat amount from the state, no questions asked. Number two, what they would have been doing, and they have been doing year after year, of course, is meeting their budget needs by increasing property tax. So when we're talking about what happens in the future, taxes aren't going to be increased to cover this. What we're talking about is, without this measure, they're going to increase your property taxes the same way they have. With this measure, they're going to need to raise the amount that they would have raised with increasing property taxes. They'll need to do that. So we're not saying that nobody's paying nothing going forward.
Right.
We still have skin in the game. We still have the responsibility to pay for the services we receive. But we keep that huge amount in our pockets every year going forward. The cities and counties, instead of saying, well, we're going to increase the number of mills, which nobody understands how that works, and we're going to base it on the valuation of your property, and nobody understands why the heck their property got valued at what it's valued at, right? So we eliminate those things. They say, okay, we need to go from 1 million to 1,050,000. And so the state is picking up the 1 million. So now now all the locals have to say is, okay, we have to raise this 50,000 because it costs more, gravel costs more, snow removal costs more. So we need to raise 50,000 more. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to have an annual municipal operations fee. It goes to every household in our locality. We may have a fee that still is attached to property. It may be per parcel or per square footage, but it's not going to be valuation based.
Right.
Now, why is this tremendously better? Number one, like I say, we got rid of the whole mill confusion. We got rid of the unfair valuations. Now it's going to be an actual tax or a fee that they talk about at their city or county commission meeting with public input. That's the key. So they're coming. This is the way government should work. Your local elected officials are going to come and present to you in a public meeting, here's what our budget is, here's what we have to tax you. You then, as a citizen, have the right to say, wait a minute, I don't want that, 16th dog park. I don't want to pay taxes for that, whatever it might be.
That's
more
exactly what I wanted to hear. Say, Rick, we got to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to hit this hard because I think that's the second part of why it's important to end property tax. This is Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. Mikey Ryan, what's up? Welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. I'm on with Rick Becker. We're talking ending property tax in the state of North Dakota. Rick, go ahead and continue. We were talking about reform. Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, we were talking about reform. Go ahead and continue your thought.
Yes. So the reform part is we do away with what people hate, frankly, about property tax. And they hate the valuations. It's like, I didn't do anything to my house. Why am I paying more in property tax because my valuation went up? They don't understand the mill process. It's very hard. There's very little accessibility or transparency with the system now, because if you disagree with it, what do? Try and shoot down the entire budget. And so this does away with the valuations. It does away with the mill levies. It does away with the idea that you can be kicked out of your house if you can't afford to pay your property taxes for 2.5 years. But it doesn't do away with the responsibility for paying for services. So services are paid, as we know, when we covered the relief, the state's picking up everything you're paying now.
Right.
But you, as a citizen, are going to be responsible for picking up the increased cost. I mean, you would anyway.
Right.
But
so
now, instead of the old way, you have a way of doing it that's more transparent, more fair, more honest. It's a win.
Well, I can tell you that listening to it, and you hit it on the head. The one thing that struck me going through this last week was transparency. Now we get to vote on certain things. It's kind of like in Fargo with the whole convention center / dome remodel. The citizens spoke on that. And of course, the commissioners bought it, and we were just like, no, we don't want it. And so this legislation that you're proposing is also going to give us the ability to do that in other arenas, which I think is outstanding. So just to put a fine point on it, a recap, the state's going to pick up the $1 billion. We're going to pay anything above that as the city deems necessary in terms of their city budget. But it's far less than the property tax that we would have been paying. Well, that's about sums
exactly.
it up. And then the second
that
part
exactly
is
right.
that now we have transparency in government. And like I said, I'm not for the free money giveaway. I think that the pandemic, I understand why we did it. Looking back on it, we know we shouldn't have done it. There's still free money giveaway as far as I'm concerned. I'm fine for ending all of that. But I think the accountability piece, and I talk about it a lot of people feel helpless in the face of government because they feel like it's a monolith. And they feel like they don't have any stake in it. And what I see this what I see this property tax bill, ending property tax bill doing is it engages the citizenry again. And it engages them on a local level, and there's going to be a certain amount of accountability now. And the frivolousness at which the government spends our money should go away.
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Exactly. This I fully agree with that. This is not a magic bullet. It is huge relief for us, which is amazing, especially now with all this inflation. Right. It's huge reform, which is needed, and it's in a state, North Dakota, the only state that can do this without increasing any other taxes. And I tell you what, this reform, you touched on it. I'll go one step further. When I have been going around the state on 4 occasions separately throughout the state, I've had elected officials say what they're concerned about is that if they want an increased tax for something specific, a project, that the voters may vote it down. And I said, well, but isn't that the way it should be? If the people in your community don't want it, then you shouldn't have it. So I think that really, really underscores the disconnect of well-intentioned elected officials who have a tendency to spend because of all these great ideas, a disconnect with the average citizen that's just trying to get by, paying their bills, and doesn't want all of this crazy stuff and this crazy spending.
I think the disconnect also comes where our elected officials think they know best, And so we're going to do what's best for the citizenry. Well, there are a lot of smart people in North Dakota, and it's like you're only supposed to present the thing. Let citizens make an informed decision, but a lot of times we're not informed. Like I said, I'm embarrassed that I didn't know how much subsidy, and again, the free money giveaway, how much, $1 billion in just things that, now the Theodore Roosevelt Library, okay, I get it. But I've never been in favor of, hey, we need to give these tax incentives to these corporations to keep them here. You know, if you have a good business climate, it doesn't matter. People will be here anyway. And I come from the Shields tree, and that's where I grew up in got my business chops. And they have a very conservative approach to everything they do. That's why they're so successful. Okay, they have a model that makes them self-sufficient. Okay, and so all businesses should be run like that. And I think we'd be in a much better situation. But at the same time, as a business owner, if somebody came to me and said, hey, the government will give you $30,000 to really make Adams window cleaning go, I think I would take advantage of that. But at what detriment? That's the problem, is that we see these corporations getting this money, and it's at the detriment to people like my friend Tony, who's on a strict budget, and these property taxes go up, and he's got to figure out another way to pay things. You know, I have a lot of friends that are teachers. You know, the average teacher has 2 jobs. It didn't used to be that way. You know, so it's like people's money is valuable. And I like the fact that the in-property tax now, it gives people an alternative. It gives people hope it gives people hope at the end of the day that, first, they're going to get more money. Secondly, they're going to pay less, but it takes away the uncertainty of what are my property taxes going to be next year. And as a guy who's 59, you know, and I said it last week, my wife and I, we've done pretty well. I don't think we'll ever be in a situation where we won't be able to pay our property taxes after we retire. But this bill alone, we have an aging population in North Dakota. How many people are going to be affected and can't afford to keep their homes, something that they worked their whole life for? So the transparency of this legislation, the fact that people are going to keep more money in their pocket, and the fact that you're not going to lose your home with this, and you have more say in government. I think those are 4 reasons that we should all be on board with this in-property tax. What else do you have to say about that, Rick?
Well, you're exactly right. This is a rare opportunity. And just so your listeners know, we are currently getting signatures, and we're coming to the end of the getting signature period. We have to have them turned in about 3.5 weeks. And if we have enough signatures, it will go on the November ballot.
How many signatures do we need right now?
We need, totally we need 31,164 good signatures. And I think we're up in the 28,000 range right now. So we've got to work hard to get the rest, because we can't just have 31,000. We have to have a cushion, because they're going to throw some signatures out. So I believe we're going to have people at RibFest.
Okay.
So people can sign the petition there. I encourage everyone to sign, because signing does not indicate, even if you're on the fence, it doesn't indicate that you're necessarily going to vote for it. But it says, look, this deserves to be on the ballot. Let's have 5 more months to vet this, to talk about the pros and cons, and let's give the citizens of North Dakota an opportunity to vote on this.
Right. And that, you know what, that's all we can ask for, is just a shot. And so to all my 3 listeners who are online right now, you be sure to sign up for the end property tax now. And I think it's something that we have to look at. And it, like I said, it puts people back in charge of government. Now, not totally, but now this is, you know, I think that it gives people hope that, okay, if we can do this with taxes, there may be other areas. Because right now, there are, and you know this, you've been in politics for 10 years, that there are people that are disenfranchised with the whole thing, that they're dropping out of the political process because they feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like they're not being heard. They feel like the government is going to do what the government is going to do. This legislation that you've proposed puts it back in our hands, which I think is probably the single biggest thing, because that might get people to see that we still do have a voice. We still do control the government. We still can get things done as citizens.
Yes, absolutely. And there is a strong effort by lobbyists and some elected officials against this. And they're putting out a lot of stuff that is not true. It's misinformation. Whether it's intentionally that way or not, I don't know. But what I would say is, let's get it on the ballot, and we can talk about it, because There's a lot of misunderstanding. I'll just say that. And we don't want to, we were fooled back in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be fooled again. We do not want to be fooled again. If the voters of North Dakota turn this down, then frankly, we just really have no right to complain about property tax ever again.
Right. We're up against the break. When we get back, I want to talk about the misinformation. Then we want to reiterate what's great about this legislation. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. This is Jon Adams. We'll see you on the other end of the break. There we go. JT comes in with the home. JT, sorry, James. James comes in with the home run. Beautiful music. So before I continue, Rick Becker, I want to give a shout out to the Miller men that made the golf outing possible. The south side of Minneapolis. I got to be down there, and it was a blast. Coach Galindo, Coach Jenkins, and Tracy Bird, along with Mr. Billy Shepard. It was a great time. Shout out Southside. These are the things, it really helped me get grounded. It's always great to go back home. So I just wanted to give a shout out, continue to do great things in the community, gentlemen. So this is our final segment with Rick Becker. We're talking in property taxes. And so we've talked about the fact that we know where the money can come from if property taxes are ended. We know that it provides transparency for the government, for the citizens. We know that it staves off a lot of things that could happen in the future, like losing your home because you can't pay your taxes. The single biggest thing, I think, is that it gives the people a voice again. So with that, Mr. Becker, any final thoughts before we close out here?
Well, just what a great opportunity this is. And when we're looking at how we're going to pay for it, I can say there's so many different areas, and there really are. I encourage people to go to the website, endpropertytax.com, go to the About. But I will tell you this, it's kind of interesting. We're projected to have extra revenue in the state at the end of this biennium that will pay for half of it. That alone is, we never talk about that. The other thing we don't talk about is when the taxpayers of North Dakota keep $1 billion in their pockets every year, that money largely is going to be spent in the North Dakota economy. That generates more revenue for the state with more sales tax. It's also going to drive young families to move to North Dakota, being the only state with no property tax. That will drive income tax revenues, sales tax revenues. It will drive businesses to come to North Dakota. We're looking for economic diversification. Being the only state with no property tax is the mother of all incentives to bring businesses here. So when we talk about how we're going to pay for it, we're not even looking at what it's going to do to the economy. We're not even looking at all the money that's coming in extra beyond what the legislature even knew they could spend. I can assure you this is very easily paid for.
What I like is the fact that it's not you're not some guy sitting in the basement in a lab thinking this up. You've got over 10 years experience in public service. And so I would encourage people, go look at the website. We didn't even touch on the fact that we have a legacy fund that's sitting there that benefits big business more than it does the citizens of North Dakota. That's another conversation for another show, but there are so many avenues in which we could get this thing done. We just need awareness. We need people to get out there, keep it in the forefront, keep talking about the fact that this is one of the things that can bring relief to the citizens of North Dakota, as well as strengthen our economy. We talk about the fact that young people are leaving North Dakota. We like bringing businesses here, and there's obviously no better place to live. I say that all the time. I think that the Valley and North Dakota in general is probably one of the greatest places to live on the face of the planet. So with that, Mr. Becker, I want to thank you for being on the show. I will be doing a podcast on. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we close out?
No. Again, endpropertytax.com. And at the opening segment, we talked a little bit about my congressional run. I encourage people to go to rickbecker2024.com. There's a lot of oppositional stuff that's telling some fibs, and I encourage people just to check out the situation for themselves.
Yeah, well, yeah, I heard one of those commercials. Evidently, you're not in favor of farm subsidies, huh?
Yeah, that's the Farm Bill and crop insurance is something that obviously is an important safety net for farmers we can't get rid of. What they've done is they took a conversation I had about the Founding Fathers' original intent in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I mean, you can't argue that any kind of federal insurance was really not part of their vision. Mm-hmm. But that's totally different than having an honest conversation of where we're at now.
Well, and I think it's funny because, like I said towards the beginning of the show, I like the fact that I haven't heard you say anything negative about your opposition, and the fact that you're bringing solutions to issues that we have as citizens. I think that's more important than, some of the ads that we see, and it's unfortunate that that's what our political climate has become, but it is what it is. But I thank you for being on, yep. And I thank you for doing the hard work. Somebody had to have this idea, and you've been at it for 6 years at least, right?
Yep.
And so I appreciate it because you're putting your money where your mouth is. There are a lot of people that talk about it, but are you going to be about it? And I personally think that it's outstanding. Like I said, it's kind of funny because Tony has been at this too. And the first few times that he was talking to me about it, I laughed. And I thought, okay, here we go. What a quack. And now, I don't want to say I'm a true believer because that sounds cultish, but I can tell you based on the way people are struggling, I'm always talking about the fact that people need relief, okay? And nobody wants a handout, but you know what? Quit taking money out of our pockets, okay?
Exactly.
Allow people to keep more of what they have. That's all I want, And I think that's what most of us want as Americans. We want to be able to do the three things, right? Make sure that we can pay our bills, take our old lady out to dinner, and plan for retirement. And it seems like it's getting harder and harder to do those things. So, Rick, I want to thank you for being on the show. I can assure you that we're going to have you on again. I will be talking about this on my podcast, just breaking up what we're talking about, as well as if you want to go to WDAY show page, there'll be some stuff on there. Thank you, Rick Becker, for being on. Coming up next week, we are going to talk about Juneteenth again, and I just want to reiterate that we have Juneteenth celebrations Saturday, the U.S. Bank Plaza, I believe it is. That's the one in Fargo, and then we have one on Monday at the Yomcon Center. And for those people that want to know, there's going to be food, all types of food. I'm sure there are going to be, I had the list. I had the list of food. I had the list for entertainment. There's going to be a lot of young people doing stuff, Okay, there are going to be a lot of talented people involved with these Juneteenth celebrations. And so this is our showcase. This is to show what we bring to the community of Fargo and Moorhead. So I would encourage people, if maybe you don't know any brothers, maybe you haven't heard about Juneteenth, this would be an excellent opportunity for you to get out and learn about other people in your community, to learn about what our culture is as African Americans in the United States. And it's funny because some people say, well, what is that culture? Well, you don't have to look any farther than the blues. Rock and roll is ours. Among a host of other things, we have any number of people that have done great things in the community and the world at large. So with that, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank Rick Becker for coming on talking about property tax, because these are the things. And we need to be involved in at this time in our life as a country. We need to be involved as citizens. And if you're in North Dakota and you don't think that ending property taxes are a good idea, you need to go to this website. You need to get the information, make an informed decision. I want to thank you for tuning in. You guys have a great week, and as always, stay black. Run. What's happening?